Hi, I'm here with Catherine Carvey, who is sadly for us, I'm not sure so sadly for her as she enters a new chapter of life, but is retiring this week as Second Presbyterian Church's Director of Facilities Management and Security. Though, as we'll learn, Catherine has really been a utility player at Second and filled many different roles and done all of them very, very well. Catherine has been a part of the staff at Second Presbyterian Church since May the 24th of 2002, and so has just celebrated 18 years with us as she prepares to retire. And so, Catherine, thank you for taking some time to share with the congregation and with me some reflections on your time at Second.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, and especially thank you for your ministry. And the ways in which you've approached your work at Second certainly has been ministry. And every single person who has worked with you, staff, lay leader, outside folks who make use of our facility knows how deeply you care about your work and how informed your work has been by your faith and by your understanding of Christian ministry. So I would love, first of all, for you to just, I think one of the unique things about the way that you approach your work is how you build a team. And those who surround you, those who work with you, those whom you supervise really have become not just employees, but I know a part of your extended family. And so tell us a little bit about the Building and Grounds team at Second and what is the spirit and makeup of that group?
The facilities team is divided into two teams. Scooby leads the support team with Jeff and Gabe and JB, and they're responsible for making sure the rooms are all set up and ready for you to come in for your various events. And then Tim is the lead maintenance engineer and works with Don and Jesse, who's probably our newest employee, to maintain the building. Make sure you have heat and air, and well, I can't always guarantee electricity, but you all know that. Change filters and do all kinds of odd little things that make this building run the way it should. Carol Cheeseman is the assistant who makes us all look good and reminds us of all the little details. And then Joe, who you probably never see, is our housekeeper. And he makes sure that the sanctuary is all ready and everything's in the pews for the Sunday worship and cleans all the offices around the building. Then Citywide, who they're not on payroll here, but they're contract employees. They're the ones that do all the cleaning. And without them, the team wouldn't work. So everything has to be clean for us to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
And they really are a team. Just because there's a maintenance side and a support side, they often cross over. This morning they were out on the property doing a project together. And they worked together to build the ramp down to the picnic shelter several years ago with saws. And they really are, they watch out for each other and we watch out for each other.
Yeah, no, I have witnessed that firsthand, both that ability to cross over into each other's areas, but especially that just spirit of support that really covers the full team. And I know that stems from your leadership and you're really pulling them together. And I know that you make an effort to gather them periodically as a team, not just for kind of supervision and check-ins, but really just for social time and team building. And I know that pays off as well. Yeah. So almost 20 years. What's that?
We do a lot of eating.
A lot of eating, yeah, which is, the way Christians best gather, I think, is with a meal, right? So I'm thinking about nearly 20 years, nearly 2 decades. And one of the things that I think is especially unique about your journey at Second is how many chapters it has had. And I wonder, I don't know how many folks would even know the various roles that you have played. So would you kind of walk us through nearly 2 decades of ministry and a number of different job titles, positions, and spaces in the building?
Oh, I'm not even sure I can remember all of them. I had 14 different titles.
Amazing.
I started out as one of Jim Riley's assistants. He used to have two part-time assistants. And so I took the role of doing that. And I did that for 3 whole months. Jim and I would argue about whether he dumped me for Susan or Susan stole me, but then I moved over and worked with Susan Hall in administration. But I was the person who would often cover the position for somebody who had lost, who'd quit or retired. So I've done PW, I don't know how many different times. And I've helped with the stewardship department and just rolled into a number of different roles. When Glenn Bell came on staff, that I was moved over and I was his assistant for a year so I could orient him to the rhythm of second for a year. So it's been lots of different places and office locations, many of which don't exist anymore. My first office is a hallway now. The office I moved to when I moved to Susan is actually where you enter the administrative offices now. So,
wow. Yeah, lots of changes you have seen and lots of changes you've helped to direct and manage as well. So I appreciate your role in orienting new pastor to the staff, because I feel like in a lot of ways you provided that for me 2 years ago. I mentioned at Catherine's going away Zoom gathering with the staff last week that my very first entry on my Second Presbyterian Church calendar says 10 a.m. Friday morning, June the 1st, Catherine Carvey. And so I know that you have played that role of orienting folks, whether it's new Lake Fellows or new employees, pastors, orienting them to the building, to the procedures and policies and practices. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that you've had a key role in establishing those policies, procedures, and practices over the years. And so you know them better than anybody. I'm wondering about, so much happens within the life of our building. And obviously that's been different for the last couple of months. But kind of typically before that, the level of activity seen at 7700 North Meridian, I think, is beyond what any one individual who has, one perspective might see or know about. So I wonder, particularly in this role of Director of Facilities Management and Security, if there are particular moments that stand out for you, memories of things that have happened in that space that are particularly meaningful or memorable.
There are so many memories. Having been here when the new addition was built, yes. All of the planning that went around that and the ideas, there've been wonderful times here in the building, celebrations. I think I remember so much, though, the maybe sadder moments of where we as staff have walked with a family as they've grieved. That those moments stand out, primarily because that's often when the staff has come together as one, the facility staff, the pastoral staff, to make sure that everything was just right for those memorable moments, and that we didn't in any way take away from what that day needed to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true. And the ways in which difficulty, suffering, tragedy, just unforeseen circumstances draw us together. A day that will always be circled on my calendar was March 12th of 2020, and the gathering of our executive team that Thursday to say, we don't know what's going to become of this new thing called the novel coronavirus, but we know it's going to impact us and we need to be prepared for that. And Catherine, your sensitivity to the rapidly changing circumstances and the fact that we didn't know sometimes from 1 hour to the next what the plan was going to be going forward. I think you and I both share an affinity for plans and routines and schedules and organization.
Mhm.
What I appreciated in those moments, really our full staff, but particularly that executive team and you through the lens of the building and your staff, that flexibility and adaptability to say, look, we're here for each other. And if there are things that need to be done outside of job descriptions or typical hours, we're here to do that and here to support each other through that. So I think you're right that those moments where things could be most difficult are also often the times where God shows up and brings us together and calls forth the best of who we are. Yeah. So those are extraordinary circumstances, perhaps, but the building and the life of the church is, I think, extraordinary every day. Walk us through sort of those typical days in the life of the facility. Perhaps just a usual work day at Second. What does that entail for our buildings and grounds team?
I'd like to say there is a typical. My typical day starts at 4 a.m., particularly in the winter when I'm looking at the road conditions, and I start texting with Kara Paul, the Children's Circle director,
Yes.
at about 5. And our first staff people report at 6 a.m., day in and day out. Not right now, but normally, to get everything ready. And then we hit the ground running. In the Tuesdays and normally there's the men's bridal breakfast at 6:30, and that kind of starts us out on the run of getting ready for moving to the next. I would say a typical day has a call on the radio of something I had not anticipated or we had not anticipated.
Yes.
Sometimes it's really simple. It's a plumbing emergency. Some days it's a suspicious package that we get to spend some time out in the cold.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just somebody's locked themselves out of their office. So the kind of those easy things. And then sometimes the day ends at 1:30 in the morning, helping to repair the plumbing. So the Great Banquet Men's Weekend has hot water to take showers.
Yes. So ordinary days. We long for those, right?
Right.
Again, I know how organized you are and what a schedule you keep, and I also know that probably more days than not by 8 a.m. that organized schedule has already been set aside for whatever the need of the moment is. And I appreciate you referencing Children's Circle, because I think one of the things that may not be immediately on the radar of our members who attend on Sundays or who engage the life of the church through the programming on Sunday mornings and Wednesday evenings or various times throughout the week is that 5 days a week throughout the school year, we have children in the building on the second floor. And so we are also, your team also supports that aspect of our ministry Monday through Friday, our Centerpoint Counseling Center and offices and common spaces there, as well as the staff who are dotted all over the building. So again, I think the level of activity in our spaces is not always something that people are tuned into, but just so true. And we make good use of this facility that we have been given. So thanks to you and your work. So I thought it would be fun to think about a couple of trivia questions. And I know that I was told, actually, that when I first started, you had a practice of every now and then offering some piece of trivia to the staff in a full staff meeting. The one that stands out in my mind was, I think when I first started, you had recently counted the number of refrigerators at Second Presbyterian Church. And I wonder if you can remember how many refrigerators there are in our building.
Well, there used to be 27. We're down to 26.
26 refrigerators. So here's the challenge to our members. Can you find all 26 refrigerators when the building is open again? My guess is not, because my guess is some are behind locked doors and not immediately accessible, right?
True. But the majority 26. Of them you could find.
Yes, that's right. So one of my favorite activities as a young child in the church my dad served was playing hide and seek in the church building. And I have often thought that you couldn't have a better building for hide and seek than Second Pres because of how many additions and add-ons there are that have created all kinds of interesting engineering fixes and changes to the building. One of the questions that our kids have asked is how many doors are there at Second? I can't even imagine we could venture a guess, but maybe you can.
No, I can't. Too many.
Too many.
When we're sorting through keys to find one
Yes.
that matches just that one door, yeah, too many.
Too many. We'll go with too many. Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
And then
too many parking spots.
Yes. one final question, and then I want to offer a brief vignette. But the question that has been asked by members of our staff as well as members of our session is, what is the earliest hour you have ever been in the building, and what's the latest hour you've ever been in the building? It occurs to me that they may be the same.
I said, on Christmas Eve, we never get out of here before 1 a.m. But the plumbing emergency at 1:30 ended at 1:30. So probably that's the latest or earliest.
Right.
I usually am, early is not all that common. Because I tend to begin my day at home, on the phone, texting and doing email. I'm rarely here much before 7:30. So.
Well, the other question was going to be, is there an hour you've never seen Second in? So I guess maybe that 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, that 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I haven't gotten calls from the building during those times.
That's right. I think something else that folks may not know is that Catherine's cell phone number is the number that is called whenever there's an emergency having to do with the building. And so I know that we have others who are on call, but yours is the phone that rings, and yours is the car that often makes its way up Meridian at all hours to respond. Speaking of which, I wanted to, and I've shared this with Catherine and with the staff, but I wanted to just share with the congregation one quick story that I think illustrates who Catherine is and what her ministry means. So I was installed the first Sunday of November in 2018. And my installation service included lots of guests from all around the country, including the preacher, my friend Rob McClellan, whose wife, Sherry Hauser, is a former Lake Fellow, and so knows and loves Second. And they came from San Francisco and brought their son, and they came kind of on Saturday late afternoon, and we had a dinner on Saturday evening. And after the dinner, we were having a conversation, and Rob said, I'd like to just swing by the sanctuary and maybe run through the sermon a couple of times, make sure I've got everything down. Do you mind if I run over there? And I said, I don't mind it, but it's a little more complicated at Second maybe than in some places, in that we of course got the building alarmed, and I would need a staff member to come and let us in to do that. And so with some hesitation, but also remembering that in that June 1st meeting, Catherine had told me she was always available if I needed anything. And so I sent her a text and I said, this is a little outside the ordinary, and it's okay if the answer is no, but the preacher for tomorrow would love to be able to run through the sermon in the sanctuary a couple of times before Sunday morning. And within 90 seconds, Catherine had responded and said, I'll meet you over there in 10 minutes. And so we pulled into the dark parking lot right there by the food pantry entrance, and Catherine's car was already sitting there. I don't remember if it was 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I know it was later than that when we left, because Rob did go through his sermon a couple of times, and Catherine Carvey sat in the chapel narthex and I think prayed for the church and for this new ministry beginning at Second that whole time. And so Catherine's heart, Catherine, your heart for ministry and your care for not just the members of this congregation, but really for the body of Christ in its many forms. I know you're a leader in your church, your congregation, as well as the Disciples of Christ denomination. And so the ways in which you live your faith through your vocation will be deeply, deeply missed at Second. My prayer for you is that you always feel as at home at Second as you do now, no matter where your journey takes you from here, that you will know that this church counts you as a part of its community and wants you to be at home here and at home at Second any time. I preached yesterday on the call of Moses and the burning bush, and that phrase, remove your sandals, for you're standing on holy ground. And I know that for you, Second Church will always be holy ground. And I want to thank you for making it holy ground for so many other people over these 18 years. So thanks be to God for your ministry.
Thank you. It's been wonderful here. It's been, my call has, I've always felt to be to administrative ministry, and that's come true here.
Well, we will stay in close touch, and no goodbyes, but certainly a lot of gratitude and blessings on your journey. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.